Well, hey, we are live. I was going to contemplate you and I pretending just to, when it came on, just to lie back, snoring, snoozing, because I'm tired just watching all the stuff that's been going on, let alone what you've been up to today. Crikey, it's been a very busy 24 hours, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think I could do with dipping my head in some liquid nitrogen, probably cool things down a little bit. My brain's overheating.
Goodness, yeah. I mean, I recorded our pod earlier today talking about the stuff and tried to jam pack it all in as close to an hour as you possibly could. And I just felt my brain just exploding. Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tom Williams, Parkrun Global COO. Oh, the comments are coming in. I expect this is going to, oh, crikey. Okay, our viewership is flying up. I can see the figures. It's a lot bigger than Friday, and it's growing, and the comments are coming in. So what to do first is just check there's anything other than people saying hello, which is pertinent. If I can ask a lot of you guys, if you are watching, please hold off on saying hello and chatting in the comments, because we are going to have questions and I don't want to miss some of the important questions.
I can see some of the comments. I turned the comments off when we spoke before, so they didn't get distracting.
Yeah.
Look at that. I wonder if Severn Bridge could restart with England if they sneakily moved their starting post and finish funnel across the border.
Yeah, there's a lot coming in. That's the beginning. So let's talk about it. Parkrun to return in England. So of course the comments.
I am Shaw from Perry Hall.
I mean, there are 1,001 things. So if we can ask halfway decent questions, and I know like legitimate ones, because I mean, fair enough. Jay Fletcher, are we seriously thinking it's okay to go ahead already? The answer to that question is they are seriously thinking about it's okay to go ahead, and they have their reasons. So we can try and ask a bit more questions that are slightly less inflammatory and slightly less aggressive. Otherwise, I won't pick them out. I won't choose them. I will ignore them. So hello to everybody. Hello to everybody saying hi. But if I can try and get through the questions. So let's see if we can go into this one. Ian Pullen, question. If by Friday evening, so of course, just in case people are wondering, we're going to be talking about the return to Parkrun in England. I expect you're all here watching right now because of this. Sorry, anyway, Ian Pullen, question. If by Friday evening an event hasn't got enough volunteers with the extra requirements, would the event need to cancel Friday evening due to the framework of not having people?
Short answer is yes, it would. Well, okay, the short answer is yes, it would, maybe. I think the longer answer, and you know me, I prefer to give longer answers, is I haven't actually thought that through in detail in terms of what level of volunteering we could accept on the day. So, for example, at Junior Parkrun, in normal times, we have a significant volunteering requirement, much more. So our juniors in Harrogate requires about 25 volunteers to happen on a Sunday, and we'll probably pick 5 of them up on the morning of the event, and that's fine. And so, you know, but Junior Parkrun in Australia, where everybody has to be safeguarding checked in advance, and we have to know that, those events have to have a full roster by Thursday evening. If they haven't got a full roster by Thursday evening, they have to cancel on the Thursday pre the Sunday, and that does result in an increased number of cancellations. I think probably having, and things come up often that we haven't really thought about, I think probably we would allow event teams to get the additional volunteers they need on the day, and teams are very good at doing that. Having said that, what we're feeling at the moment, and it is just a feeling, and nobody will know until the events really start, but what we're feeling at the minute is the desire to volunteer will be incredible, and teams will be overwhelmed in the most incredible way by people volunteering. And people, if they haven't listened to it, they should listen to Nick Pearson's discussion with Vassos on Free Weekly Timed about the decisions we made. And at the end of it, Vassos says, where will you be running when we come back? And Nick says, I'll be staying local and I'll be volunteering. Now, we mustn't, this is a plea from me, and we'll say it again and again and again, we mustn't gang up on people who don't stay local and who don't volunteer. It's really important. It's a fundamental principle of Parkrun, and Paul Sinton-Hewitt himself would fundamentally believe that. We are a non-judgmental community in that way. But I think when Parkrun reopens, a lot of people will want to stay local and volunteer. So I just don't think it will be a problem. I don't know it won't be a problem, but I don't think it'll be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking positively, and a bridge will have to cross when we come to it. And I say we come to it because, of course, as an event director of a junior event that's going to come back, I've been busy working in the past day or two to sort of arrange and get things up and running. So yeah, absolutely. My fear, I don't have the fear of volunteers, but I can understand the people that do have that fear. So we are going to try and wrap by 8 o'clock, just to let people know as well. We're going to try and put a cap on this. Tom, I expect you're knackered. You've got family duties and you've got other things to get on with it. But you've been speaking to Virgin Radio, RTE, BBC Wales, ITV London. We've lost track of how many.
Emma Barnett on 5 Live was good.
But there you go. Too. Yeah, and of course, everything's been across the board. There's been so many blog posts. I mean, the Nick thing with Free Weekly Times, I listened to that last night. Again, if you want to listen to reasoning, spend 30 minutes doing that.
Right.
Don't listen to it. There's a lot explained in there too. So I listened to that, and yeah, absolutely, everything is always reasonable and reasoned. Right. Next up, Elizabeth Morris, Lil Morris. I've only seen a few bits and pieces on social media. No idea how you manage to offer such a balanced view all of the time. Yes, how can you be so balanced? Right, next up. Okay. So Claire Winarchik. Now I've seen these comments, and Claire's been posting this a lot all over the place, and obviously she has a lot of anxiety and fear regarding it going forward. So she asked, what's going to happen if cases keep rising? I am scared plans will change. So of course, there's been a lot of stuff in the news today about, I think it's Bolton just in the past hour or so. And
I was just on BBC Wales on their radio, and we were talking about Caerphilly, where I think there's a similar lockdown, and it's a really important question, Claire. It's a really valid question. I think at the moment where we are, and it does touch a little bit on the more controversial question from earlier, Danny. So where are we now? Right now, we feel, and we've communicated this a lot, so I won't spend loads of time on it, but we feel that the public health benefits far outweigh the risks, and so the chance of somebody being at a particular parkrun event with COVID-19 are relatively small, and the chances of them and then going on to infect somebody are also relatively small. And so we feel, and lots of people in the Sport England and DCMS and so on, we've met about it a lot, and we're all kind of in agreement. I don't mean everybody's in agreement, but all those groups are in agreement. We're comfortable where we are. We are seeing, of course, over the last few days, a significant rise in positive test results in the United Kingdom. And of course, we're watching that really closely, and we're watching hospitalizations, and we're watching the intensive care numbers, and we're watching the fatalities, and we're keeping an eye on everything. We're also watching places like France and Spain that have seen similar spikes in cases. I think I was reading something earlier that Spain may already be coming down again. It's early days in all of those things. At the moment, we feel really confident that parkrun is safe now, and the benefits are huge. We've obviously announced a return in, I think it's 6 to 8 weeks time, towards the back end of October. If we still feel it's safe, then we'll continue forwards, and my feeling is we will. Now nobody really knows what situation, we're seeing schools go back, universities go back, but we're really confident that we will. And actually the public health benefits of parkrun are significant. I mean, really, really significant, and they will become greater as we go into winter. So as we go into winter, people are more isolated, they're less connected to their communities, they're less active. Actually moving inside because of winter, you're in a higher risk environment often than you are outside, and so there are lots of benefits to being outside with regards to parkrun. Now, really importantly, we do have really good channels in through Sport England and DCMS and so on, through the deputy chief medical officers, both of whom are parkrunners, and we have really good channels in there where we can have those conversations about safety and about appropriateness. And I feel most likely we'll be reopening. I am really confident in that, and I think it's really, really important that we do. At the same time, we have a really great ability to respect local lockdowns and local restrictions. And so if we see flare-ups in places and the government are implementing restrictions, and I've not seen the details yet actually from Bolton, I've not really been across the news so much today, but actually we're able to close events in specific communities, individual events or groups of events. Of course, that raises the question, as it always does, well, what about tourism? If you close that, does that mean all those people from that infected area, do they go somewhere else and take it somewhere else? And we'll have those conversations, and we'll look at those complex problems. But at the minute, I'm really confident that we're in a really good place. And, a few days of the cases being higher, I don't think suggests necessarily that in 6 to 8 weeks time, when we're looking to reopen, that we'll be in a worse place than we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to keep to a theme of all these worries and questions. I'll try and mix it up a little bit. And there's another one coming up here, which I wanted to address as well, if you are okay with this. But Karen Spackman says, is there any chance of a lesson in using the volunteer app for timekeeping? Now, I have been speaking to James Kemp, who you know is, of course, is head of ops. Is that right? Yeah, Parkrun Global.
Yeah, he's our global ops manager. So Ian Rutson's our global tech lead, I think. Sorry, I'm terrible with job titles. Apologies, Ian.
They just do lots of work. Really mean
so
as much.
Ian Rutson is really technology, and James is our global operations manager. They work together on a lot of these things.
Yeah, because of course because the events will have to go app only, and understandably, because of course it's safer this way. I have spoken to James. James has asked, well, I'm going to be on the test list. I have been testing my phone. So if you're watching now, you are worried, and think about Karen as well. I have been able to mirror my screen from the phone. So what I will do when I get the test app and I go through it and play with it and see what it does, I'll be able to then go live, bring it on, and then show you what it does and how to use it. So hopefully that basically dispels any fears of the use. And hopefully if I'm showing you how to do it, then we can do that too. But that's obviously pertinent, the fact that the app is going to be app only, and events, of course, having to.
And just to add to that, Danny, so I was on the phone to Ian probably an hour ago or something, and asking him about how on track we are to get the app ready for the reopening of Northern Territory in Australia and of Cape Pembroke Lighthouse in Falkland. They don't have the same restrictions as everybody else, but we are asking them to follow the COVID framework, because we'd like to see the COVID framework working properly and so on. And it's not actually, when you for relatively small events in place like that, it's actually not that huge difference actually.
Not really onerous.
We're hopeful. Ian's hopeful, confident. He'll be watching this. Ian has promised me on the pain of, I don't know, he'll have to, if it's not, he said he'll get a tattoo. There we go. And he's promised me they'll be ready for the 19th. It might or might not be, and I don't want to put him on the pressure like that. But if it is, then clearly that's a long way ahead of parkrun events opening in England. And absolutely, we will be committed to all events being able to be hands-on with it well in advance of starting. The process is going to be largely the same at the timing and scanning bit, just as simple. We're working really hard on that. Where it will be a real difference, I think, is the web FMS and processing, adding the results, which should be approximately 10,000 times easier.
Wow, yeah, QR coding, sending it straight into web FMS, automatically applying the people down as volunteers. I really look forward to playing with it, testing it. But it's new in the company. I've been following their tweets. I mentioned that in our pod earlier today. Yeah, really looking forward to exciting times. And of course, I'm a big advocate of the app, because of course I had my concerns at first because of people using their own phones, but yeah, I'm a big advocate. We use it at Serbs and Juniors, and I also use it at our club handicap, and we also use it in other places. I think it's a very good timer. Good question here by Josh Smith. How does risk assessment with individual landowners, or how is risk assessment with individual landowners going to work?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and let's wrap that up, I think, into kind of landowner permission and the whole landowner thing. That was something that Helen, my wife, said to me straight away. Do I need to go and ask the council for permission then? And so if we look at that whole thing, and as we've seen all the way through the pandemic, we've seen landowners, be they councils or not, take very different approaches. So if you remember in the early days, some closed parks and some didn't. And our park here, they taped up all the benches and said you couldn't sit on the benches. Some parks stayed open, and it was quite a varied approach to it. And at the time, I think the government kind of stepped in and said you need to open your parks because people need outdoor space to be active in. And I think clearly, I wouldn't be saying anything controversial saying the government whilst they've got some stuff right, they've got a lot of stuff wrong, of course. But I think they really should be credited with supporting outdoor physical activity all the way through. Many people around the world didn't have access to that. We've got friends who in a number of countries around the world who are confined to their flat with multiple children, and you weren't allowed out of your flat. You had no garden, you have no space at all for multiple weeks. And so it was really, when we saw parks being kind of told to open and stuff, we thought that was really positive. As we've seen things come back, and it's, football's a good example, really. Football came back on August the 1st. And football, to compare it to parkrun, I think there's about 2 million people registered to the
grassroots
or something. Registered grassroots footballers in England. I think there's 3 million parkrunners in England. So we're not incomparable. We're a decent sized organisation. We've got 850 locations. In England, football has, I think, 2,000 leagues, 120,000 teams, I think. Anyway, they all came back, and clearly all of those matches, and we all see them in our local parks all around our towns right now every weekend. They all came back pretty smoothly, and we didn't see examples of this council saying you can't play football and this council saying you can only play football this way. And we of course, particularly I'm incredibly familiar now with the return to football guidance. I think I'm familiar with all of the return to sport guidances, and we're working really closely with Sport England and DCMS to understand the best mechanism through which to achieve permission across our 850 events. It's not quite that locations, because some juniors and 5Ks will share, but a lot, it'll be 700 locations or something. And so what clearly wouldn't work is saying to 850 teams, there's the framework, off you go and get permission, because a number of those would get permission straight away. A number of those it would be a bit complex, and a number of those it would be incredibly complex. And that as a piece of work for everybody to do, it doesn't sound remotely like the best way to do it. And so we are looking at how that mechanism best works, and we're looking at who's best to collaborate with. And clearly there's organizations like National Trust where we have a lot of events, and I've been in communication with them today around their land. With Forestry England, I've been, not today, but I've been in communication with them. Organisations like the Local Governments Association. So at the moment, I guess our message to event teams is predominantly to hold back at this time from, unless you've got an incredibly good relationship with your landowner, hold back at this time and let us guide you through that over the next week or two, and we'll come back over time. Now, we've committed, I think rightly at this stage, we've committed to communicating as much information as we possibly can, as soon as we possibly can. So as soon as something is kind of confirmed, completed, not necessarily finalized, like the framework, we're trying to communicate it to give as much notice as possible. But that means that actually, because things like the announcement went out yesterday, when it could have gone out in 2 weeks, and we could have done a whole load of that work behind the scenes. But we just feel that event teams benefit from more notice, and it gives them more opportunity to feedback questions and challenge stuff like, how does a risk assessment with individual landowners work, and so on. And so let us deal with all of that. That's a massive, long, waffly answer. At the moment, our position, because again, parkrun works because it's simple and scalable, and we remove as much bureaucracy as we possibly can. Yep. At the moment, our position is that event teams, and this may change, but is that event teams will not need to have their own individual COVID-19 risk assessment. Their risk assessment will be the same, assuming their park hasn't changed and there's not our motorway going through the middle of it. Their risk assessment will be the same as it's always been, and they'll need to sign that off as they restart to confirm there is not now a motorway going through the middle of it. But actually, our preference, if we can get away with it, is wrong. Sounds like we're cutting a corner. But if we can manage it, is that we have a single central COVID-19 risk assessment, that we currentently have a version of that published within the COVID-19 framework, which allows us to say, these are the risks. This is how we'd like you to mitigate them. And at the moment, all the parties we're working with are comfortable with that. All the senior parties, be it DCMS or whoever it is, everybody's sort of comfortable with that. So we feel like we're moving through that quite nicely. But just hold back for a week or two, and as things settle down, we'll be able to move some of those things forwards.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, big answers. You gave a 13-minute answer the other day. Michael Woods timed it. Friday night, your answer to that one question was 13 minutes long. So apologies to people if I have to abridge your questions, because of course we're about a third of the way through in the limited time.
I feel free, Danny. I feel free on your podcast. I've spent all day going on news shows where you've got 35 seconds before the news kicks in.
Down by it, yeah. That must have hurt you a lot. Brevity, and I question about parkrun. Question for you from me then. What time did you wake up this morning?
Just before 6. So I was at my desk at 6 o'clock this morning. 6
o'clock in the morning. And have you eaten at all? Have you just been at
I managed to get out for a run. I actually did manage to get out for a run.
Okay.
Briefly. Smart. And I have managed to eat, yes.
Okay, super. Well, I'm going to abridge this question. Lucy Maris, question: will new events start at the same time as others? Because then she has concern about the size of the big ones.
Okay, just put that question back. And remember, I've got a memory of a goldfish.
Okay. So I was trying to abridge it, but yeah, Sheffield Hallam is coming back as a new route, Endcliffe Parkrun. I'm wondering how you can introduce a new course with a 2-minute briefing. Does it mean I have to wait a bit longer to come back? So she's basically saying because they've got more information to detail, they don't require the 2 minutes. I don't think it needs to be. I'm going to answer for you. The 2 minutes isn't precisely exactly 2 minutes, but obviously.
Well, I will be at every park run with a stopwatch, making sure that it is exactly that. And we'll be digging a big hole for the run director to fall into on the 2nd of what was that thing where you get splatted when we were kids. So we will actually be asking people to stick strictly to 2 minutes. It's a really I'm saying this all the time, and I'm not saying it insincerely because these are really good questions. It is a really, really good question, particularly at Endcliffe Park, which I know really, really well. I helped Sheffield Hallam Park Run start.
Is it
Crikey?
I've not been there, but it's
the course has changed, and I've not been involved in the course change bit, but I helped them get going with Ryan Amos when he first started it, and Anita Afonso, who worked for us at the time, was helping them get activated, and I was a kind of a volunteer up north in Leeds. And it is one of those events that is really, really busy. Lots of participants certainly on the old course. I've not seen the new course on a relatively narrow course. I think I think there are really important things there, which is interesting because when you have a new course for an old event, you've typically, not always, but you've typically got a lot more participants turning up at a venue they don't know, as opposed to a completely new event where the attendances are typically lower because we keep them secret and all those kind of things. At the same time, I don't think many people learn the course in the run briefing. So I think actually most run briefings, if you start saying, you turn right at the fountain and left at the duck pond and go the goalpost, I think people switch off from it actually. So there is going to be a lot of that kind of stuff where we need to
it's superfluous, isn't it?
Yeah, and we'll need to share stuff in advance. So Sheffield Hallam is a bit of an edge case because it is such an old event that is moving to a new course, and it's a very busy event. But in those kind of situations, we'll look at things like, for example, emailing all the registered participants a clear and simple route map with some instructions or whatever it might be. So we'll look at achieving some of that stuff digitally. So it's a really good question.
It's a good question because, of course, every single event is going to have all its nuances. You mentioned the motorway not going through the middle. Obviously, an extreme example, but of course, not everybody's been going back and checking on their park spaces in the interim. I've only been to my little junior parkrun event location 4 or 5 times in the past 6 months. I've been to check up on it, but I go there thinking, has anything major drastically changed? And it could have done in that particular time.
And it will have in some places. I mean, Helen Hood, our head of event delivery, and Joe Sinton Hewitt, our head of event support in the UK, they've both been on leave this week. Good timing. But they're both back next week. And they are absolutely, I mean, they're both them both incredibly well, obviously, Danny. They're both absolutely incredible individuals. They know the teams brilliantly. They're super hands-on. Nobody knows parkrun operations and delivery better than Helen and Joe. And they are going to be over the next however many weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, just all day, every day, supporting teams again and again and again. And I'll get stuck into that, as will James Kemp and Kathy and Jane and everybody in the team. So, there's going to be an incredible effort to support events in some of these cases where people say, what do we do about this?
You're going to be busy. Are you going to have the ambassadors? Of course, the network of ambassadors are doing
absolutely
already.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Super. Right. This question, I think we may have been asked this on Twitter, so I promised that I'd ask this question. John Hamilton, hi Tom, wondering about the situation in Northern Ireland and can we hope to see progress soon?
Yeah, I really hope so. So when we look across the UK, so we've made the decision, as we've said multiple times, we feel that, the public health benefits outweigh the risks. And the public health benefits are clearly as great as in Northern Ireland as they are in England. So that's the same. And the risks you think are similar. I don't think there's a vastly different level of virus, might even be a little bit lower. I'm not quite across that detail. But so from that equation, we would be saying the same thing. We feel it would be appropriate and safe. It's not a great word to use. The benefits outweigh the risk is probably a more accurate summary. The risks are very low in Northern Ireland. At the moment, there are limits in both Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. In fact, I've just been on RTE radio talking about those limits. So we are working. So Matt Shields is our ambassador for Northern Ireland, and we're working with Sport Northern Ireland and their I can't remember. I'm getting confused with the names of the groups. Their advisory group on return to sport. Well, I can't remember what it exactly is. Where we've submitted the framework to them, and then we're now into that collaborative process of how do we overcome the hurdles. Everybody wants parkrun to come back safely. Of course they do. They want it to come back and they want it to be safe. You know, it's such an incredible initiative. The difference in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland compared to, and Scotland and Wales compared to England, is those other nations all have limits of numbers which prevent us from operating, which aren't in place in England. And actually, I've heard a few rumours, and you and I had a conversation earlier, Danny, about a limit of 30 people in England, and actually that's not the case. If you read the guidance carefully for outdoor events, there actually isn't a limit. There isn't an upper limit of participants in England. So I wouldn't rule out Northern Ireland falling into the same time frame as England. You know, we've not said England's going to go at the end of October and no one else can, or England's going to go at the end of October and it's definitely going to be the next one. We might see multiple European countries going before England starts. So we could see countries going in the beginning of October. We could see absolutely any of Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland falling into the same time frame as England. So everything's possible. Conversations are being had at the highest levels, and everybody's really positive and collaborative. It's not nobody's blocking anything. Nobody's getting in the way. Nobody doesn't want parkrun to come back. Everybody wants it to be safe, and it's about getting to the point where everybody's comfortable. Yeah,
absolutely, and that's the thing. There are no absolutes right now because, of course, nobody really knows. You're having to ebb and flow, be proactive, but also having to adapt and move as we go, because of course New Zealand, everything was happy with there, and of course, as we know, then they're not going to be happening for the next few weeks as far as been fed. Nice quick question for you. Ready? Will junior parkruns be coming back at the same time?
So we've talked about this an awful lot. At the moment, yes, they will be coming back at the same time. Very sensibly, lots of people wonder if it could go sooner than 5K parkruns because it's predominantly children. Actually, the majority of people at a junior parkrun are not children. So for every 100 kids, there's about 115, I think, volunteers, spectators, and adult participants running with the kids. Nevertheless, it is easier. I get it's easier for those adults to socially distance. And so in Scotland, for example, I think in Scotland, outdoors under 18s don't need to socially distance in sport, I think. So you look at that and think, well, actually, the adults could, and the kids don't need to. So junior parkrun could really come back. So there are lots of older people, adults, in attendance. At the same time, there are. Last time I looked, there were about the same again 4 to 14-year-olds registered at 5K parkruns as at junior parkruns. And I think I can't remember the exact numbers. I think it was about 300,000 each. And actually, junior parkrun works because the numbers are quite relatively low. You'll know Danny is a junior ED, and Helen, my wife, is a junior ED, and I'm there every week. It works because the numbers are quite low, and it's predominantly very, very young. So of course we get some older children. In fact, we even have some older than 14-year-olds where they get a special dispensation to take part for a particular important reason. My worry, if we started juniors before we started 5K, is you'd get an incredible number of 6 foot tall 14-year-olds running 6.5 minutes round 2K and mowing 4-year-olds out of the way, left, right, and centre, and because they've missed their parkrun for so long. So as things stand today, and we said all the way through this whole thing, at no point will we kind of ever rule anything out, really. I would really expect, and this announcement is definitely about 5K and juniors starting at the same time toward the end of October in England. And I think that will be the case.
I shouldn't have said short answer, because of course everything it shows you, it reflects your passion and knowledge of the fact that you've thought and pour over every instances. You recognise this, that it's not as simple. It's not a black and white. You said just there that you've been there week in, week out, and you see that, you know what it's like. You have a feeling and the flavour for it. Right, another one of these questions, and apologies because the comments are piling up. But this is something which predominantly our audience is tourism, EDs, ambassadors, the engaged, the long-term engaged. and Garnish, again, you mentioned this earlier. How will parkrun be communicating about the polite request to not tour? And how can we as core teams manage if we receive high levels of non-home park runners?
Yeah, so I can't remember the exact wording. I don't think we would quite be saying polite request not to tourist. So I think we would be encouraging people not to. And I know there's a bit of a semantic there, but there are multiple reasons why people might tourist. You know, and I think parkrun is there predominantly for people's mental health. That really is, and people might disagree with me on that. Parkrun was created by Paul Sinton Hewitt for his own mental health. We joke about it. I joke about it with Paul that he created parkrun as a social intervention for a lonely bloke, and that's what it was. Yeah, it was. He at the time, of course, everybody thought it was a time trial, and we called it a time trial, and it was about runners getting fitter. But it wasn't really. It was about a social intervention for a lonely bloke who was having a tough time in life, and he was injured and wanted to see his friends. And actually, it took us years to really understand that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because behind every person's behavior is their own mental health situation. Some people's mental health is great and some people's isn't so great. And you don't really know. You can't really tell. You can't really tell by looking at somebody. And so for some people, parkrun is an escape from, you know, some incredible hardship or, you know, 90-hour weeks as a frontline healthcare worker or whatever it might be. There's such complexity behind people's situations. And actually, you know, if somebody from, I don't know, I'm going to make it up, from Bushy Parkrun is visiting their you know, sick relative in, I don't know, Newcastle, and they do Newcastle Parkrun and they tweet, oh, look at me, I'm at Newcastle all the way from London. You don't know the detail behind it. And really is important that people aren't beaten over the head for doing things that they are legally allowed to do. If you are allowed to travel to another town and do a park run, then that we should accept that. Now, at the same time, of course, as Nick said, he'll be trying to stay. He'll be staying local and volunteering. I'll be staying local and volunteering. We can do those kind of things. We mustn't think it worse for people that don't. We also, and it's very similar to the under 11s rule, where the under 11s rule is there to keep children safe and to give event teams a tool with which they can intervene, or we can intervene on their behalf if they feel a child is not participating in a safe way. And so there is an element where teams should be pragmatic and measured in how they apply these kind of things. And so, of course, if you are in, I don't know, a town in the country where there's no coronavirus at all, and next to you is a town, so your town A, town B is the coronavirus hotspot and it's in lockdown and their park run's closed, and you know you normally get 20 park runners a week and you've got 200, and the 180 extra are all from that town in that coronavirus hotspot that is locked down, then of course you should be reaching out to us, and we'd be working with public health specialists, and we'll be understanding, well, what does that mean? What's the likelihood of that? And we can measure those kind of things. So we're there to support if you have any concerns about anything, not just high levels of non-home park runners. If you have any concerns about anything, reach out to us at head office, and we, likely through Helen and Joe, but we would provide the level of support and reassure you. But I don't want event teams to feel like, hang on a minute, we need to be policing the number of tourists we have at our event in case that leads to a massive spike in coronavirus. In the same way, you know, McDonald's employees in Newcastle aren't checking they're not getting customers from Sunderland. That's not something that I think that event teams should be anxious about or worried about. If they are, they should pick up the phone or drop us a line, and we can talk through those concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I discussed it in the pod a few weeks ago about it. I don't like the accusatory stuff. I mean, that's the thing. People should be doing this. No one's going out of their way to harm anybody. If they're going to tour, they have their particular reasons. I said inflammatory, and I'll say it again now. I'm going to be touring all over the country, left, right, and centre, without a care in the world. It's not true. I will be staying local, very, very local. But you know that people are. I do get the feeling sometimes people want to. But on the whole, they're okay with it. But there are a few people who are waiting to champion at the bit, and they're looking at people's data and they want to see, look, you've been there, and they want to fling mud at these guys. And as you say that, please don't do it to these guys, because we don't know what's going on in people's lives day to day. It's the same thing with the volunteering, as you've mentioned before, that you have that element of, are you still there, Tom, by the way? Have you frozen? No. Have we gone? Is Tom there? Where are we? Tom, are you still there, fella? Are we still on? Can anybody give a comment about us? Am I still on? Tom's dropped out. No. Have we dropped out? Is he reconnecting? Right, you're back. I thought it's not me. It's not me, is it? Oh, you're on. Tom's on. Phew, panic. Right. Sorry, I was talking. I thought normally Tom chips in while I'm having a little bit of a natter, and you kept unusually quiet. Anyway, sorry. Right. So I was just going to up the whole. Yeah, I don't want people to fling mud at people if they're going around touring. Same thing with volunteering. If people don't volunteer, they might have their particular reasons. It is. I know it's very hard. We all do it. We're not flawless. We all judge, and we have judged people in the past for various things. But again, it's the appeal now to publicly try and say, look, we want to make sure that we understand people are doing things for what they think is the right reason. Generally.
And you know this, Danny, as much as anybody. From the very beginning, Paul said, and Paul is parkrun, and he's the only person in the world who is parkrun. And kind of, Paul's not so involved now in the day to day, but kind of what Paul says goes from a principles point of view. And in the early days, Paul said, this is a really good example. Wouldn't it be great if everybody volunteered 3 times a year?
No, he's gone again. His internet, is he connected to the Wi-Fi? Wouldn't it be great if people volunteer 3 times a year? All right, we'll wait for Tom to come back, and I'll continue what Tom was saying. I'm sorry about this, guys. But yeah, him and Crispy Wright actually came up with it. They came up with a bit of an algorithm to decide, they didn't decide, they could work out statistically, numerically, that people could volunteer. Are you still there, Tom? Yeah? You're back? Did you hear what I was saying?
I think so.
I was filling in for 3 times a year. Crispy Wright and PSH coming out with the data. They could work out if people did 3 times a year, then they would best do it. And that then, of course, it applied early days. And of course, parkrun has grown and expanded since. And then as you probably were about to say, people then started to slightly weaponize that and use it as a stick to beat people with, because they weren't doing.
Well, Paul never minded if you didn't.
Yeah.
Paul never minded at all if you didn't volunteer at all. You could join the 250 club and never volunteer, and Paul was fine with that. And it's part of parkrun being non-judgmental. You know, Russ Jeffries did a good Twitter thread about it earlier today. It's critical. Parkrun is non-judgmental, and it's founded on a principle of not being judgmental, and that is really, really important. Yeah, absolutely. Right, I've lost some of the comments. When I scroll down, unfortunately, I've lost some of the comments. Some of the questions are good, and if I've lost them, right. Okay, then one of these questions. This one's very good. Shane Snowwolf, what is parkrun? Again, obviously taking this very seriously. We've got 1 angry emoji. Oh dear. Okay, somebody has to agree with what you have to say, but on the whole, most people, lots of loves and likes. Right, let's try and find another question, because I had I've got a Danny Tick Tom Cross here from Melanie Bath. That might be Melanie that's not happy.
Danny Tick Tom Cross. Ooh, oh dear. Melanie Bath. She's a pod lover and listener. Right, where are we? Okay, let's try and go through these questions. Sorry, that I'm dropping out has thrown me a little bit. Let's just throw Linda Bush's comment in for the meanwhile. The app is brilliant. Definitely need rain covers for phones when it rains. They come as standard now with, I think, don't they, with event team stuff? Well,
I don't think you're challenging me on my intimate knowledge of the COVID-19 framework. I don't think.
I think please
don't judge me. I travel from Wales. Kevin Jones just said that's brilliant. I don't think we'll be allowing teams to hand out waterproof rain covers, because obviously there's a risk of transmission. Not that we have to eliminate 100% of all risks, but I don't think they're really necessary. I mean, I don't know, Linda, if Bradford Parkrun isn't quite as tough as Harrogate Junior Parkrun, but I think we got through the winter without rain covers for our phones. Just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. The emojis come. Another angry emoji. Oops, some people are not happy with what you have to say, even though no matter how clear and kind, you can't please all the people all the time. This is one thing I'm learning as parkrun grows, because the early days, and as well, I was very, very passionate. Well, I'm very passionate about it. That it was a danger of being evangelical, that anybody not liking parkrun is like, how dare you? But you know what? Sometimes it's nice to have people challenge you. It's nice to have people not agree with everything you have to say, because it keeps you thinking about things. You don't want to live in a bubble where you just do things and no one can challenge you. And some people have, well, the fact is people have every right not to agree with what we have to say. But of course, at least they have the ability to listen to you, and we're giving you the platform to be able to respond and be addressed and communicate with you and ask questions of you. And you, again, are you affording them your time? Because I hope you've got enough staff for the next couple of weeks, because it sounds like you guys at HQ, you're going to be busy bunnies. And again, I'm sure ambassadors, anybody else can help you out to get this going. Please let us know. Right, James White.
Well, look, I think, the cross, Melanie, the cross, because she couldn't hear me. Goodness, thank goodness. Melanie doesn't hate me, she just couldn't hear me.
That's good to explain that, right.
Oh, okay. Brilliant.
Sorry. James White, thank you for all your hard work, Tom. I can't imagine what a difficult time this has been for parkrun, but you have always maintained clear and consistent comms. It's much appreciated. Yeah, absolutely. Right. People are chatting away to each other. Ian actually did a fingers crossed earlier about the date you gave for the release on the app side of things. Okay, and Garnish is firing away with the questions again. So I'm just going to go through other ones. And then, how will the reputational risk be managed if the general public see large groups of sweaty runners as they're unlikely to understand the precautions we've put in place and will simply see us as irresponsible? Which is very good PR, the parkrun PR side of things. Good question.
And it's been really interesting because we've seen overwhelmingly positive reaction from non-park runners actually as well. Over the course of the last 24 hours, which we hadn't expected. So we'd expected to have seen a lot more reaction than we did around hang on a minute, large groups gathering. And so, for example, listening to the Jeremy Vine show, which I don't normally do, but listening to his coverage of parkrun this morning as a non-park runner, it was incredibly positive. And we expect people like that to take a contrarian view sometimes and have both sides. And it was just, and he had a lot of park runners on, I know, but it was just positive person after positive person. I think, a bit like risk, there are clearly going to be parks and open spaces that we come back to where the local people don't feel comfortable with parkrun being there. But that happens today. I sit in the middle of our global operations and we see all of our incidents recorded. And today, we have, farmers driving tractors down the middle of Starlight. Those kind of things happen, like just because of the scale and the size we are. So things like that will happen. I think for me today, I think I may have said when I was last on, but on Bank Holiday Monday, we went to the park for Aston's birthday. And it was really, to me, it looked like a completely normal park on a normal Bank Holiday Monday, August Bank Holiday. It looked normal. And that return to normality is really helpful for everybody. Today, I deliberately went for my run during the hours when the kids were going to school. So I couldn't take the kids to school because Helen was taking them and two parents weren't allowed to take them in. But I went for my run at that time just to have a look around Harrogate and see what it was like. And it was a return to normal. There were kids everywhere. The secondary school next to us has got 2,000 pupils. Our kids' primary school's got 400 pupils. There were people everywhere. There's hustle, bustle. There were kids everywhere. There were cars. It looked normal, which is great. And I think increasingly people are getting relaxed. And so as we look forwards, and universities will be back and football clubs will be back to a certain extent and so on. I think as we look forwards towards, remember, and I keep reminding people of this today, we're looking toward the end of October. Mm-hmm. In the absence of a second wave where everything is completely, up in the air and who knows what's going to happen, which I don't think is going to happen. Nobody knows. We think the world will be much, much more comfortable with groups of people assembling in various ways, particularly outdoors, by the time we come back. And actually, certainly, for 9 a.m. starts in England, for example, parks are pretty quiet at that time of day in England, particularly in the autumn going into the winter. So will there be some conflict? Unfortunately, there probably will, but there always has been in the whole history of parkrun. When we started Harrogate Parkrun here, I remember there was a couple of local residents on the Stray who decided they weren't very happy about it, and they were going to walk their dogs up the middle of the course towards the runners every single Saturday at 9:05. They made a point of it, and we came back, and they came back, and we came back, and eventually they gave up. But
them out.
Harrogate Juniors, we had a guy every single Sunday morning at Juniors. He'd come through on his run. This is 4 years ago probably, and he'd kick the cones over in the finish funnel that we'd put up about 8:45 every single Sunday. And it got to the point where we just thought, we don't want a conflict. So we'd go, ooh, as he went to them. And then if he kicked them over, we cheered. And if he didn't, we booed. And after a few weeks, he started kicking them over. And now we kind of wave at him and say hello. So you'll always get those kind of levels of conflict. I think we feel the community will be much more at ease, and the parks are relatively quiet, and actually I think that will be relatively fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Conflict. I mean, I'm always aware as well that people do have the division of opinions regarding parkrun, what parkrun's decisions are regarding here. I do find, and I'll say especially that if you're going to be angry about the parkrun's decisions, no matter how clear they are, that being angry and vitriolic and shouting at parkrun isn't going to change your guys' minds, is it? I mean, the fact that you guys have done due diligence on this, spent hours and hours speaking to all the professionals, and being very angry across on social media isn't suddenly going to nudge parkrun in a different direction, because of course the majority of people are behind. I can see right now the majority of people are behind, and of course what it does is when you shout at people and get angry at people online, it closes down any discourse. So what you're doing here right now is you're having conversation, you're giving the time to have decent discourse and communication. But if people get angry and shout at you, then you're just going to go, I can't talk to you, I'm going to walk away. So absolutely, the thing is you have to respect people's opinions. But I think you do that. I think it's not a two-way street. I think it's you do that very well. You go, okay, I respect your opinion, I listen to you, and I'm going to do this. And other people go, you're wrong, you're not listening to what I have to say, change because I demand you to. And that doesn't quite work. You have to be having decent conversation here. And a dialect. And so if you're going to have that and communicate with HQ, when I've been watching from an outsider, please try and have decent conversation. Don't be cross and angry, because people turn away and shut off for what you have to say. And you see, anyway.
Can we answer Michelle Lewis's question there? It's very good. She says, as much as I love parkrun, I worry about the vulnerable, especially our 87-year-old Bob, who hasn't got an 87-year-old Bob, who is waiting to do his 400th when it starts back up again.
Absolutely. Where is it? Is it down the bottom? I'm just going to find it because
near the bottom. Michelle Lewis. Yes, I think it's 6 from the bottom. I think just above Simon Teal.
Okay, so 2 people have asked the same question. 2 above Simon Teal. Okay, just say that. There we go. Yep. Michelle Lewis. I'll leave that up. Go and find the other one. Yep.
So every event team has their 87-year-old Bob. They really do, and our junior parkrun has those equivalents. 5K parkrun, they all have them. It's one of the most wonderful, Elizabeth's Corner at Bushy Parkrun. I mean, absolutely incredible. And so we see that kind of thing all over the place. It's really important, and they're much loved parts of the community. I think there are I think the most important thing is that we are honest about how we are returning.
Oh, don't go again, Tom. Got 12 minutes to go.
That's, for me, the most important thing of all. And there's been... Oh, is it back?
You're back. You're back. Oh, yep. Only dropped off.
Okay. I'm going to blame you. Nick Pearson will be laughing at me because he takes the mickey out of my internet all the time. So where was I? So it's really important that we're honest and open and clear about what parkrun's going to look like, so that people can make their own decisions as to whether or not they would like to come along. And it would have been quite easy for us. That's maybe too strong. We could have said we're going to do some things that we weren't really going to do to get back a bit sooner, maybe, or to get back a bit easier. But then people would look at, okay, this is the COVID-19 framework, this is what parkrun are going to do. Then they'd turn up and get a totally different experience. And they've not then been able to make their own decision, informed decision about whether or not they come along. And so I think personally, and when you're in this kind of leadership role and making these decisions, you need to understand how far can you take your beliefs and your personalities, because you need some of your personality and beliefs in there. Otherwise, you might as well just put everything to a vote or have some algorithm that calculates it. But you can't go totally, if you're super risk averse, you can't go super risk averse. Or if you're super cautious, you can't go super cautious. I believe personally that we've taken some of people's, particularly the older and shielding groups, decisions away from them more than we should have. I feel that, my mother-in-law's was in the shielding group of, you've got a letter, you're not allowed to leave your house.
Yep.
My mum's 77 or 78, my dad's 75. And I think in Switzerland, they weren't allowed out of the house for it when they were over 65. I'm not sure he told the truth about his age, to be fair, the old codger, but I don't think he thought he'd lie about his age again since he was, are you 18? But I think largely it should be up to people. I don't think I think if we as event teams, if I put my event team hat on with Harrogate Juniors, let's say with our 87-year-old Bob equivalent, I think we event teams have a responsibility to be as as clear and as concise and as honest and as truthful about what part one's going to look like. And we should allow those people, where the government guidelines allow it, we should allow those people to make their own decisions about whether or not they want to be isolated to a level or not. And people can decide to come or not. People can decide to participate as a walker or a runner or not. People can decide to funnel manage or scan, or they can decide to marshal on a faraway corner when they're not going to go near anybody. And people can make those decisions. But I think it's really important that 87-year-old Bob is allowed to choose how 87-year-old Bob would like to participate. And I personally, I don't think it's necessarily up to us to say you shouldn't do that, regardless of your opinion as to whether or not you'd like to do it. And the extreme of that is a grandparent who is isolating. We were in this position, not being actually allowed, the government guidelines saying you're not allowed to go and see your grandchildren and give them a cuddle. And I'm not quite sure that's morally right. I think if I was an 87-year-old grandparent, I'd want to go and hug my grandkids, and I would want to make my own decision about the risk. So that's a long-winded answer.
That comes into the equality time, the living and existing kind of discussion, doesn't it? Absolutely. Yeah,
I think so. And I think it's really important. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. People want to be spending their time in the most positive fashion. So I didn't manage to get it because the questions dropped off because they found Michelle's, but there were two questions. Rog Hildreth and someone else on YouTube, they asked about the government guidelines with the 2 meters thing. How are you going to be able to do that on a start line? Because of course, with Bushy Park Run, 1,500 people, a meter apart. That's, imagine this giant, great big square of a kilometre wide, square kilometre, isn't it, of people doing that. So regarding that guidance, how are we going to do this with the big events?
Yes, and it's I don't think it will surprise anybody that area particularly was the most challenging area for us to reach a position of consensus with all the powers that be around how does that work. And there is a discrepancy between team sports and non-team sports. So if you carefully read the team sport guidance on the government website, it will say socially distancing where possible. And for example, then in the football return to football guidance from the FA, it says competitive match play is now allowed. So you can sliding tackle and you can stand in a defensive wall and link arms and you can push people out of the way for 90 minutes. If you're a defender and I'm an attacker, I can push and shove you for 90 minutes and multiple times a week, and that's fine. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just pointing out in team sports, there is that where possible. In running events, outdoor events, I can't remember the exact terminology they use, mass participation events like parkrun, that's less clear. And it can be interpreted in different ways, and it's taken us an awful long time to get to a position of consensus, because we know we can't. That all park runners can't be a specific distance apart at all times at all events. And going back to my answer earlier, Danny, about the being clear and allowing people to make their own informed decision, because we're being really clear. We can't say everybody's going to have a 2 meter ring around them, and then you turn up and you're on a start line and that's not there, and then we've then effectively been dishonest with you. I'm looking at my phone because I'm going to tell you the exact wording that we have agreed for the framework. If you bear with me for a second, yeah, sure. I'm not sure it's quite in the framework yet. So the exact wording for...
Come back to that.
Oh, got potato internet again.
Oh, no, I was brought up another question. I was going to just say what someone's comment while you're finding the wording, but you found the wording very quickly. So
I haven't found the wording yet. Keep going.
I haven't. Okay, and so while you're going to find it, Simon Till, mental health in tourist town Stratford-upon-Avon is suffering with many pending redundancies at the town's biggest employers. Tourism would help us. That's the thing. Tourism isn't necessarily a bad thing per se, and that's the thing.
Yes, I remember listening to an interview as we were coming out of lockdown, I think, with it was somebody in the southwest, and they were furious about lockdown and people not being able to come and visit, and the tourism industry going under. And at the same time, they were furious about people coming into their town and bringing and so you can't have it both ways. So the statement that I believe, and I'm actually quoting this word for word, the statement I believe that is going to go into the framework around exactly that question you raised, Danny, is we will encourage all participants to socially distance at the start of each event and ask that where possible, all participants should remain at least 1 meter apart from each other at the start of the event and avoid face-to-face contact. Yeah. And that will go in writing, and probably should have put it in already, but we've been really busy. But that's really, really important. And that isn't a simple, that isn't a kind of a get out or a cop out or something like that. Come on, Aston, you can come and give me a hug. It's bedtime in the Williams house. Say hello, just a quick wave to everybody.
Hello, Aston. Hello.
Do you have a good day at school today? I have seen him since school. Good night. He's very tired. Good night. Okay, off you go. And so that isn't a simple way of us saying, look, we're just going to stick where possible in so we can do whatever we like. That is a genuine, we've had in-depth discussions with the highest levels of public health and with government and with various stakeholders and insurers and all of those kind of things. And we are all comfortable that where possible, we will be asking partliners that where possible at the start of events, in the start areas or on the start line, use as much room as you can. As you know, we're going to move start lines where we can, where possible. We're going to move start lines to, it's not always cute. You wouldn't always be saying, bless. You didn't see him earlier. We'll be making as much space as we can. And we'll be asking partliners to use as much space as they can within reason. We're not going to say, look, here's a 1 kilometre square in Bushy Park, for example. But at the same time, there is an acceptance at all levels of the organisations that we need to work with and are supportive. That in some cases that we will see that, and that won't be the case. We know that's the reality. We need to be honest about that. But we believe, going back to Mike Reed's research and our framework and the underlying level of infection in the community and the fact we're outdoors and all of those things, we believe and others agree that is still an incredibly low risk of infection.
Yep.
And we believe that the public health benefits outweigh that risk massively.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I recognise we're running out of time, and where's the comment about people wearing masks on Halloween? If we're back on the 31st, then we'll all be wearing masks. That'll be Ed Griffiths. I like that. Yeah, is it true you chose end of October to come back so we can start on Halloween and not be wearing masks anyway? I think people's behaviours as well. I'm not going to be going up close. I'm not being high-fiving. I'm not. Again,
people's behaviours will be actually different. I refuse to elbow bump anybody. I refuse to go up and do an elbow bump. I'd rather just wave or something like that. But yeah, I think people's behaviours will be dramatically different. And I think, as Mike said again in his research, going about your everyday business in an outdoor environment. And I know part one isn't. And I know there are points where you're overtaking somebody, you're collapsing over the finish line. So I'm not saying part one is entirely going about your everyday business. But going about your everyday business in an outdoor environment with other people is incredibly low risk. There is, as far as I'm aware of the however many million cases, there've been 25 million cases or 30 million cases. I'm not aware of any, and we have looked, and that doesn't mean I'm right. I'm not aware of any cases of infection being traced back to participation in sporting events. So there was a case of maybe a runner-to-runner transmission, but it was two friends who had gone for a run together, so it wasn't clear whether they'd been in a car, shared a car, or whether they'd gone into the other one's house, or how close they'd been, or whatever it might be. And so, we know we're dealing with an incredibly safe environment. So one of the safest environments. I sound like Donald Trump. It's an incredibly safe environment, such a safe environment, one of the safest, but it is one of the safest environments with one of the greatest public health risks. Now I am getting tired. It's 1 minute to 8. One of the safest environments with one of the smallest public health risks with one of the greatest public health benefits. So I think that's really, really important to understand.
Yeah, absolutely right. We're coming to an hour. I'm getting some comments that we may have both frozen anyway, so we've not had the greatest of luck with the internet. I think we're still rolling, recording. It'll still appear on YouTube as far as I know. And therefore it'll keep rolling and put it up there. People saying thank you very much to the chat. How long have you had glasses, may I ask?
Well, as I think I heard Vassos say the other day, mid-40s eyesight just seems to go off a cliff. And I was 46.
Right. Well, my eyesight went terrible at age 8, and I've always had it appalling. But I do why you're still getting used to the glasses because you're still doing the old Eric Morecambe thing every
all
now
the time. Yeah, I think there's a point where you feel like you've got great eyesight and your eyes will be great forever. You're never going to need glasses, and you're this eyesight perfection. And then suddenly, about the age of probably about 44 or something, 45,
yeah,
just 1 minute you're doing this with everything, and here I am. I can't,
I'm -8 in my eyes, and that's short sighted. So of course, most people when you get older, it's a long sighted thing. So I'm just doomed to have rubbish eyesight. There is one question which, again, the same people asking the very good questions. It always ends up being the same people. An event team doesn't want to go ahead. What happens there? They absolutely staunchly refuse to go ahead. What can we do? And Tom's gone just as I ask him that question. Right. While people are, if he comes back, I'll ask him that question. Thank you to everybody that's watched. We've had the largest audience that I've ever seen on here since we've been going through StreamYard anyway, across both platforms. Great informative chat. Thank you very much, everybody. Wait until you're 55 and everything goes south, says Lucy Maris. I don't know why I just posted up Matt Garner's comment with -8. -8, yes, my eyesight is -8. Yeah, but I wear contact lenses because I don't want to spoil my ridiculously attractive face and eyes with glasses. Tom, if you're still there, come on back. That gives me opportunity to go through the comments and say thank you to everybody. Lucy Maris, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. Incredibly reassuring. It makes me feel so much more positive after these chats. You are both superstars. Curtis Parker Milne. Hello, Curtis. I adjust my glasses so regularly that sometimes when they're not on, I still go to move them. Bev Gow. Cheers, both managed to watch more this time. Thank you, everybody. Emma Poole. Thank you so much for doing this. Incredibly helpful. Here he is. He's back again. Kind of bring him in. And look, you can see whirly. What is it with up in Leeds and Harrogate way? Their potato internet is just awful. Kevin Jones, you said, please don't judge me about touring from Wales to come to tour. No, we shall not do that, young sir.
Am I back?
You are back. And can I ask a question? If an event team refuses to come back, this is a tricky one. I've got to finish you off with a tricky question. Event team absolutely staunchly refuses to come back. What happens?
Look, I like how you've left that one till 2 minutes past 8.
I only just thought about it. I'm triggered by another question. I didn't have it on my mind until I saw a comment. Sorry.
So it's really important, as all of this is really important. And we published our survey results, I think yesterday, from the intent to return survey, which showed that whilst four-fifths roughly of park runners are ready to come back in 4 weeks, and in fact that number went up a bit, I think, on Friday. 4/5 are ready to come back. I think it was about 8% thought they'd be unlikely. This is general park runners, unlikely or very unlikely to come back. And I think that's probably reflected. So that is probably reflected in amongst event teams in some ways. Now, actually, if you've got within an event team, some of the people in the event team are anxious. You might have others that persuade them it's okay, maybe. And so It might not be that we're looking at 8% of it. I don't think we are looking at 8% of event teams, which in the UK would be in England would be about 60. I don't think we're looking at anything like that. I think we've probably got 10 or 15 event teams, or 5 or 10 event teams maybe in that position. What I'd say to anybody who's listening feeling like that is just get in touch with us as soon as you possibly can. Support at parkrun.com and we'll talk through your concerns. There is no rush. There is no immediate action.
Hang on in there, internet, Tom. There's no immediate action required.
End of October is what we're targeting.
Yep. Are you still there? End of October. There's no rush. I'll speak on behalf of him. Are you still there? You're back again. There you go. End of October. There's no rush. End of October. Yep. You have to speak to communicate with the HQ team, because I've seen that people have been responding to comments that I've seen online saying, please get in touch with your ambassador and HQ. The support is there. Please don't feel isolated and cross and angry about it. If you need reassurance, there's a community at each event surrounding you, supporting you, able to help you, and to make use of that.
I think what's important, and we have to be really honest about this, is that we can't allow it to be up to the event team whether they come back, whether that event comes back based on a COVID-19 concern. And I know that sounds hard, and we want to talk to event teams as much as we can. And personally, I will spend as much time as needed, and I'm already talking directly to event teams, and I will personally talk to any event teams for as long as they want, directly, one-to-one, privately, to talk to all those concerns. At the same time, if we've got an event with 5 or 10 or 15,000 registered park runners, let's say 10,000 registered park runners, we know that about 8,000 of those are keen to come back. We know 4/5 of them from the survey where we're doing keen to come back. So you've got thousands of people wanting to come back. If you had a core team of 3 or 4 park runners who felt anxious and didn't feel it was right, I don't feel that it would be right that 3 or 4 people within a core team could prevent a park run coming back for multiple thousands of people who are ready to come back. And I know that sounds really, really hard. Park run will commit to doing everything we can to speaking with those concerned event teams. And if we can't get to the point where we can reassure them enough, then we would still look to take that event forward. And, you know, but we would respect their decision to not want to be involved. And the door would always be open for us, for them to return when they felt safe. Like, we really must, with concerns and anxieties, they're very real and we really understand them. At the same time, we must do what's right for the wider park run community, which at the moment wants to return and get back park running.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that answer. Right, let's finish off. Let's tie this up with a few light-hearted posts. Alan McDougall, thanks, Tom and Danny, for tonight and Friday as well. Really interesting, in-depth discussion.
Thank
Great
you,
work. Alison King, off topic, laser eye surgery. Danny, I was -9. It has changed my life. Alison King, yeah, you want to look at my bank account and then say laser eye surgery.
Pay for it.
Well, but so if you get offering to pay for it, laser eye surgery, the closest I can get to that is by probably doing something with this pen with my eyeball. That's the cheapest I can do it. And then a few more little comments before we go to say thank you, because of course, thank you for your time. Thank you for Friday night. Thank you for this. Again, it's all been part and parcel of the fantastic communication you guys have poured out in the past few days and had to address. I hope you managed to get a respite after this, some rest and break, because you'll be a very busy bunny. And of course, yeah, people saying about landowners agreeing. I hope so too. Rex too. Thanks, Danny and Tom. That was an interesting hour. And yeah, lots of people saying thank you. Thank you to VKP, Victoria Knight Phillips, and James, Dennis, Jean, Martin. Wonderfully well put this evening. Thanks to everybody, and even those who are angry with what we had to say, what Tom had to say. Thank you for watching. Thank you for giving us your time this evening. To Tom, everybody that's watched, thank you for listening to what was said. So brilliant. It's been an interesting occasion, and I'm sure there's going to be lots more to be said and discussed in the coming days.
I'll be back, I'm sure.
Are you back? Are you booking in? Are you booking in? If you need another Q&A, Tom, this channel is always here for you to pop on and do this. It's a brilliant resource. Thank you. And he's frozen just as I'm thanking him. Brilliant timing. Hey, right. Okay, then. So if Tom doesn't come back, I'm going to say good night to everybody. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Peter Chiverton. Thank you, Stuart Brownwoods. Like I say, just affording us your time. It's much appreciated. And there you go. You can finish off with my face. Take care. Have a lovely week. Podcast is coming out probably Thursday, because I haven't even started to edit that. But that is full, jam-packed of laughs and information and discussion regarding the return in England, as well as at the park. Like, do all the usual social media things you haven't. Love to you all. Be safe. We're very excited to come back. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. It'd be disingenuous. And yeah, here's fingers crossed. Looking forward to us being back together in the park safely. Take care.